comes in.
Yeah, never recorded one.
Oh, rats. It's reversed. It's mirrored.
It's recording.
Oh, that's it.
But I think she said she could see it, okay, when we did it.
Here, I'll look.
Can you?
Yep.
We're gonna need better light too.
Dr. Jim will work it in. So we don't have to buy.
Right.
Good morning.
For as big as that television is, it looks awful small on the screen.
I know that's what.
We can't zoom that thing.
I don't think you can.
Okay.
Let me in, Denise, please.
We gotta better start opening the gates.
Yeah, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine.
Fine on there?
Yeah.
You sing and you listen.
Yeah.
Okay, we want,
Yeah.
So what you're gonna.
Back in.
you need to get me a presenter view.
Look at that.
Presenter view or speaker view.
Hold on. Let's see. Share screen.
Up your view.
Oh, I'm sorry. Speaker.
No, that means who's ever
Oh,
full screen.
if I do that, then I can't. Oh, I have to admit.
Okay.
Okay.
Tom, turn off your camera. Make sure you're muted. Everybody make sure your cell phones are muted.
I'm gonna turn it off. I just wanted.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Linda Hicks.
Yep.
Oh,
Can you
hi.
hear me?
Okay, I can hear you. Can you hear us?
Yep.
All
All
right.
right, we're, this is all new.
Why not? Why are
Okay, hold on.
we recycling? Okay.
Oh, because he just left.
So we want speaker view, I guess.
I have that. I guess because as people line up so they can, do you want me to try?
It should have me at the top there.
Well, you're here and then everybody else is going to be in a row as they come, I think. But she may not have her camera on. She just has the voice.
I don't know how to put my camera on.
Oh, okay.
Your camera's not, we don't need your camera. As
You
long
don't want to see
yeah.
me?
as long as you can see us, we're fine.
Yeah, I can see you.
Okay.
Am I full screen or am I just a tiny little picture?
Now you're full screen.
Okay,
So,
go figure.
So you'll be okay. So far, she's the only one in the room.
Okay. What's that?
Linda Hicks.
Okay.
Dr. Hicks.
Anybody else? No. We'll give it another minute or two. I guess let's go ahead. Okay.
I'll watch for the door out there.
All right. Well, friends, good morning. To those of you here, Linda online, and anybody else who tunes in, welcome to Heroes, Scoundrels, and Kings here at Chapel by the Sea Presbyterian Church in Fort Myers Beach. And welcome to all of you. Heroes, Scoundrels, and Kings is going to be a look at some of the people in our faith family. We're going to take 12 sessions. Some will have more than one person in them. But what we're looking at is our family of faith. One of my favorite shows is Finding Your Roots with Dr. Henry Louis Gates, where you remember he looks into famous people's backgrounds, digs out their genealogy, and the ultimate guide is they explore do a DNA printout for them. And some of it's surprising, some of it's shocking, but all of it's enlightening. We're going to look at our DNA of our faith. Where do we come from? Who are our ancestors? And of course, if we're going to start, we may as well start at the beginning. So the first session is going to begin with Adam and Eve, or as I like to call it, Great Expectations. Sometimes the best ideas end up biting you in the wherever. Anyway, those of you watching online, if you're on Facebook, please like us or leave us a comment. Anytime during the broadcast, if you're on YouTube or on Facebook, you can feel free to go down below and write in a comment or question. I promise after the session, I'll answer everybody. But do leave us a comment. Let us know what you think if you're like us on Facebook or on YouTube, or subscribe to that channel on YouTube. So we're looking at Adam and Eve. And in the Bible, we discovered that there are many stories, but they all make one story. They all come together. And the basic theme is God's love for humanity and for his creation. So from the beginning, we see a God, a creator God. We see a loving God. We're going to meet a merciful God who is just, but comes to us in love. And we're going to find quite a cast of characters in the process. So the main characters in this story are God, God's people, and everybody else. Everybody's God's family, but some are closer to God than others. And that's what we're going to be looking at. What we have is a window for us to know and understand God. These stories are not there just for historical significance or just because of the value of the story. They're helping us understand who is this God we serve and worship. So from this, we're going to understand more about our story and our relationship with God, because each of us has a unique role that we carry forward with us as we walk with God daily. So the story has a clear beginning and a clear end, and it's not so hard to figure out. It starts with Genesis and creation, and it goes on through to the new heaven and the new earth that we meet in Revelation. So we're bookended, the Alpha and the Omega, if you will, are creation and the new creation. So we go back to Genesis, and in Genesis, we are presented with two creation stories, both involving the man and the woman. First, we get the 6 days of creation and the Sabbath in Genesis 1, and in Genesis 2, we get the Garden of Evil and the fall. And it's interesting, in the Hebrew, there's a different name for God used in each of the stories. So we tend to put them together. We tend to conflate the two stories, as one, but in the scriptures, they're very distinct. So take a look at those, see what each one tells us. Starting with Genesis 1, 6 days of creation and the Sabbath. Now, remember I said ours is a God of love and mercy. The Sabbath tells us that from the very beginning. The design of the world, God thinks about us and our needs. So let's brainstorm for a minute. What would you create when you were a kid? My house, my brother and I loved making forts. You know, we were always making little camps here, little forts there, whether in the basement or outside. What would you guys make? What would you create?
Roads.
Roads?
Play with cars on.
Mm-hmm. Play with cars on the road street. Yeah. Highways you make?
With great tree house.
Great tree house. Yeah. Yeah. Well, if you were thinking about today, what's the modern creation that you can't live without? What's most important to you?
Electricity.
Electricity. Yeah, you don't appreciate that until Ida hits and wipes everything out. I mean, they still half of Louisiana still doesn't have power. It's 10. It was like Irma for me. I was 11 days without power after Irma. What else? What can't you live without?
Food.
Food.
Water.
No, I'm talking about creation. What stuff that we made? You know, for most of us, it's a cell phone nowadays or a mobile device. No, no, you're obviously of a different generation. Okay, well, in the beginning, we find God creating the heavens and the earth. So God doesn't just, in this story, God doesn't just throw it out there and say, presto, it's done. There's a very methodical and orderly process. It begins with day 1, creation of light. Day 2, he creates the waters. Day 3, land and vegetation are created. Day 4, the sun and the moon. Day 5, fish and all fowl are created. Day 6, he finally gets around to creating animals and us. We're the last thing, male and female, God created them. You notice that? We're at the very end. I mean, everything else comes first. This is also where we get the idea of mankind is the crown of creation. The last thing, he saved the best for last. Okay, what's your reaction when you look at that pattern? What are some responses you get?
How did we get light before the sun?
How do we get life before the sun and the moon? Yeah, light before the sun and the moon. Well, that's interesting, Lanny, you bring that up because that goes back to the whole concept of God as light. And remember, in Revelation, we're told that in the new heaven and the new earth, there's no need for a sun or a moon because God is our light. So I hadn't thought of that. That's a good point. What else strikes you about it?
Things come in order. Each one needs what came before,
Mm-hmm.
and at the end, we can't really create humans and animals until we have the things that are going to keep us going.
One of the things that strikes me is it's not all that dissimilar from the process we know as evolution, because you get the land and vegetation, then the fish, then the fowl, then mammals, and finally human beings. And maybe God had a plan before we did. How do you respond when you see all that God has created? What's your reaction to it? Gratefulness? Yeah.
Awe.
Awe. That was what I was talking about last Sunday, that experience at Brattleville Falls. Okay, well, let's ask something else. When you were in grade school, how did you picture God? I have a clear, no, it's funny, I have a clear picture. I still can see my image as a kid was this guy with long white hair and a long white beard and a long white robe up on this, sitting on the clouds with all these levers controlling everything that's going on in the world below. And it's still a vivid image in my mind. How did anybody else remember how you thought of God as a child? Paul said, when I was a child, I thought as a child, I acted as a child, but now that I'm an adult, I think, and act like an adult. So how do you picture God now?
Immense.
What?
Immense.
Immense, okay?
I don't picture him other than feel it as a force.
You don't picture him, you feel it, you experience it, okay? Yeah. So how do you react when you're told that you are made in God's image? Confused? What would you say, Linda?
Just can't believe that.
Just can't believe that.
I think that was something invented and put in the Bible to appeal to our egotism.
You think it's to appeal to our egotism in the Bible.
I have a friend who said he must have prostate problem.
Okay, so we get the 6 days of creation and then the Sabbath. And that sabbatical rhythm is an important part of the story because, like I said, it means God is considering our best interest and our need for rest. It's built into the very fabric of creation. And we tend to transgress that and are very easily, you know, the biggest shopping day in America in the supermarkets is Sunday. And when I was in the Bahamas, they had blue laws. Everything was closed on Sunday. And I remember I was on a cruise. We went to, Caymans. And we landed there on a Sunday. And the cruise director was saying, all the shops are going to be closed today. I don't know why. I guess these people don't value money. I was thinking to myself, well, maybe they value the Sabbath because there really is a value to that. You have to plan ahead. It can be inconvenient. But on the other hand, you know that there's going to be a break. God plans that into the way we live our lives. Okay, so that's the first story. Now we get on to Genesis 2 and the Garden of Eden. And as we begin, we find God forming Adam from the Adamah. So Adam is made from Adamah, which is the Hebrew word for the dirt or the clay or whatever. And then God breathes into into Adam's mouth. He breathes life into him. And both in Hebrew and in Greek, they use the same word for breath, for spirit, and for life. So air, breath, the Spirit of God fills the man. And by the way, when you think about the word enthusiastic, that's where it comes from. Being filled with theos, being filled with God, enthusiastic. Now we're told God's created this guy, so he plants a garden in Eden in the east. And he makes every plant to grow. And so Adam's in the garden. And in it is the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in the center. Now, there's other details. Oh, this is the other thing I want you to recognize. In order to, if we look carefully at the details that we're given, we can read a lot into the story. There's a lot revealed in a few words. And you're not reading between the lines, you're reading the details that are present. So we're told that he plants a garden in the east. And we're told that 4 rivers flow out of there. Ever been to Yellowstone? Remember, I was surprised when I realized there was 4 rivers in Yellowstone, one going north, east, south, and west. They flow in 4 different directions. I've heard that before. Okay, but in this case, the 4 rivers are the Pishon, the Gihon, the Tigris, and the Euphrates. Ah, we've heard this before, haven't we? Of course, if you're English, it's the Tigris and the Euphrates, but Tigris and Euphrates for us. So when you look at this, you can realize from creation, this part of the world and our lives and our faith have been tied together. And over the last 20 years, more so than we ever imagined possible. But he forms a garden in the east. That's all the detail we're given. But that's all we need, because this is not a textbook. This is not a book of a science textbook. It's not a physics textbook. It's not a manual of operations. This is a collection of stories. And yes, there's laws in there. There's all kinds of guidelines for how one lives. But we do a disservice to the scriptures and to God when we try to force this into our scientific mindset and our thinking. Let the Bible speak for itself. Let the Bible be the Bible and tell us its story. So he's placed into the garden, and he's told to keep and till the garden. So, first of all, you can't have a garden unless you stay there, right? So he's not a wanderer. Wherever this is, however this story begins, Adam is in one place. And so he's keeping and tilling the garden, and he's told he eat of every plant except for the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. So guess what happens to Adam? He's bored. He's lonely. And so God decides that man shouldn't be alone. So he creates all the animals from the same dust. And he brings them to man, and the man names them. Adam names them. But none is found as a suitable helper. Now, this is an important term. And I'll tell you why. Because in the King James Version, it says a help meet for him. It doesn't say a helpmeet or a helpmate. And it means a helper suitable for the man. Because we don't speak King James English, we miss the meaning of that. And we tend to conflate them, and it's been used to keep women suppressed for centuries. But he's looking for a suitable helper, someone who is his equal, if you will. So what does God do? He causes a deep sleep to fall on the man. You thought anesthesia was a new development. And he takes a rib from the man, and from that, he creates woman. And he brings her to Adam. And Adam says, this is now bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. For she shall be called Isha, for she was taken out of Ish. His name, the Hebrew is Ish and Isha. So Ish and Isha meet, and Adam says, you're the only woman in the world for me. But they are naked and not ashamed. In other words, there's no sense of guilt or wrong. Everything is perfect. Now, you have this perfect creation, this perfect garden with the man and the woman, Ish and Isha. So if you could have a picture of just one scene from that story, which one would you choose?
I don't understand the question.
If you could, thinking about that story of the Garden of Eden up to this point, if you could take one scene, which one would you choose as a picture of how it fits together for you?
When they first see each other.
When that first, oh man, doing weddings a lot around here. I do a lot of weddings. The photographers with the first look, and sometimes they'll do it before the wedding, sometimes it'll be when the bride comes down the aisle, but the photographer's always watching the groom. When she walks up to him or taps him on the shoulder, first look, yes, that's a powerful. I hadn't thought of that. That's a good one. That's a good one. Yeah, that first look. Well, what does the story tell us about the nature of man and woman? Yeah, Laura.
That's confused.
This confuses you?
Because we're told that Abraham was the first heroic figure in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Are these heroic people we're talking about? How can we view them?
Abraham is spoken of as the first heroic figure. What was your question about Adam and Eve?
Are they heroic?
Are they heroic?
I don't see how they can be.
Well, if you're the progenitor, if you're the first one, I would say that's a big role to have. The first man, the first woman. Heroes don't necessarily mean triumphant victors. Heroes are also the people who are faithful and follow God's command and overcome adversity. So in that sense, we're going to see in just a moment what kind of adversity these two have to overcome. So what do you think is the message in this story of the Garden of Eden up to this point? What's God saying?
This is the part that I have a problem with. It's just symbolism to me.
It's just symbolism?
This doesn't agree with evolution, which I do believe in. And this is just, number one, it makes women number two. I don't care what you said. Man came first. She's made from his rib. That sets a precedent that goes on for centuries.
Okay, but the feminists say, well, if God saved the best for last, then guess what?
No, I don't.
Well, that's the argument from the first
Many
stories.
would argue that.
Lana, you see, that's it, the two stories.
But
Don't-
it's all leading up to this knowledge of good and evil.
This is why I say, don't try to make this fact. This is,
That's where I.
yeah, this is a parable, if you will. This is telling us a story with a meaning and going to reveal something about God to us and something about ourselves. And if we try to lock it into scientific fact, we miss the point of the story. So that's why I say the key message here is God's love for humanity, that he's caring for them. And when he refers to Eve as a suitable helper, his goal is, I see, that there's a parity there. You see,
I think helper is making it second place.
I don't.
partner. The other term is partner. The other term is partner,
Right.
suitable partner.
That would be a better.
Yeah, it depends on the translation, but it's how you read the text.
When everybody knows a man couldn't manage the whole world and all the earth by himself without somebody to tell him.
To tell him what to do. Exactly. Or he would be lost.
He needs somebody to tell him to ask for directions.
Yeah.
Okay, let's look at the first sin. Because everything's perfect, everything's going along wonderfully, and then along comes the serpent. Now, this is a misrepresentation, really, because in the text, we're not told that the serpent is on the ground. We're just told that the serpent is there. This is why I say, going back to your point, Landon, you can't take this, literally. It's telling us something about. So when you were a kid, what was the one thing that was off limits to you?
The spillway. Bad people went there was risk of drowning.
Don't go there. Okay. Places you couldn't go, things you couldn't do. You don't touch my tools or whatever. Everybody has rules that they have to follow. Okay. But what is it that creeps you out? What creatures scare you? Which one?
Spiders.
Spiders.
Snakes.
I've gotten
Snakes?
used to snakes now.
I got snakes all around the house.
Yeah.
I don't like them, but I keep them. But we have a black snake. We call him Blackie. Every once in a while I'll walk in and surprise him, and he'll surprise me. And I go about 2 feet in the air, and he goes off in the other direction,
Yeah.
flying like mad.
It's because spiders move so fast. That's why it's scary.
Everybody has something that creeps them out. And, some people enjoy snakes. I don't. You don't. But the issue becomes not the snake. The issue becomes the question. Did God really say? And Eve's response is, did God really say you should not eat of the tree? She says, oh no, we may eat of all the trees except the tree in the middle, the knowledge of good and evil. We should not eat of it or touch it lest we die. And so Satan, the tempter, uses that and says, oh, you won't die. In other words, God's lying to you. You'll be like God, appealing to her vanity. You will know good from evil. So now we're coveting. And Eve takes, and you notice in the scriptures, it doesn't say apple. It says fruit. For all we know, it could have been a mango or a papaya, but I would go for mango personally. But she takes the fruit and eats it, and it's delicious. And she gives some to Adam. And then they realize they're naked, and they feel shame, and they make clothes from leaves to cover themselves. Now, God comes into the garden, and they hide from him. Why? They know shame. They were human. They disobeyed. So this raises the question of innocence versus integrity. And this is, I think, one of the big lessons. Innocence is lifted up as the highest value, if you will, in religion. But I think integrity is the key. Because innocence means you've never had to choose. If you say, well, I would never do that, but you've never had the opportunity to do that. When the opportunity comes, then you have to choose integrity or depravity. You have to choose which you will do. And when they confront this choice, I don't know, maybe they're not even aware that they're doing that, but suddenly they choose to disobey God and test it for themselves. So God confronts them and judges them. And he says, why are you hiding? And Adam says, well, we were naked, so we hid ourselves. And he says, who told you you were naked? And it's like, oops. Oh dear, put my foot into it that time. So God confronts them and judges them. Now, here's the important thing. Who's cursed in this story? The serpent. Huh? Eve. The serpent is cursed. And because you have done this, you will crawl in your belly the rest of your days. And I shall put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring. And he shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. The imagery here is seen as a preview of the crucifixion. That in the crucifixion, Satan is crushed under Christ's heel on the cross, but in the process, Christ dies. Because in that culture, if you bruise your heel, if your heel is injured and you can't walk, that's a death sentence. So the serpent is cursed. The ground is cursed. From now on, it will not yield its fruit willingly, but it'll reluctantly put forth the bounty of the earth for us. So the serpent's cursed, the ground is cursed. Woman is told she will suffer pain in childbirth, yet her desire shall be for her husband. And that word pain is also a word for labor. I will greatly increase your labor in childbirth, yet your desire shall be for your husband. Eve is not cursed. The earth has been cursed, so Adam is told from now on, he will have to earn his living, earn the fruit of the land by working for it. It won't be right there for him. Now he has to, by the sweat of his brow, produce everything they need to live. So again, there's judgment, but there's mercy for the man and the woman. Now, after judgment and mercy, God goes even farther. He makes garments for them from skins. He clothes them, and then he sends them out, and they are cast out of Eden. So sin and death are part of the world now, and there are cosmic consequences because of it. And we live with the reality. So this is a parable to give us an explanation of why there is good and evil in the world. And again, if we try to nail it down to find the actual Garden of Eden, it's a vain quest. What's important is that we follow the precepts that we're given. So what human weakness did the serpent exploit in convincing the woman to taste the fruit?
Curiosity was one.
Curiosity?
Doubt.
Doubt? Yeah. Did God really say?
I think one of the things we never talk about is that was right from the first creation of humans. We're set up for the fact that God wants us to love Him, wants a relationship, but this sets the picture for the whole rest of the Bible as people stray from, try not to have relationships, try to have better relationships.
From the beginning, God wants that relationship one-on-one with his people. And the rest of the story is about people running away from that, wanting to separate from God. And who's going to come back? Who's going to be part of it again? Who do you feel is most responsible for what happened?
I think they were set up.
You think they were set up?
And I don't understand how this, I understand what someone was saying, but I don't think how it illustrates the love of God. And in most of the Old Testament, I have trouble seeing the love of God, the loving God.
Yeah. You have trouble seeing the loving God in this story and in the Old Testament.
Yeah, but I think like a parent sets up ground rules and rules for your children, you still allow your children to make make the choices, and then you turn it into a learning
A learning
experience if they take
Or you punish them.
the wrong, yeah, well, one way or the other, it becomes a learning
Becomes a
experience
learning experience.
for the,
Yeah.
for the child by being allowed to make a wrong decision,
The child makes wrong decisions and learns. That's
like Adam and Eve did.
yeah, and that gets back to innocence and
So God
integrity.
loved them like a parent loves his child.
Yeah, Doc.
I'm still hung up on the shame that's involved. Now, God created man and woman. They were naked. Why should they feel ashamed in front of God for what they have done? And if God provides clothes for them to wear when they leave the garden, who's out there to see them? And make them feel ashamed?
Well, you know, the other part of that is he's providing clothing because no longer are they in that perfect environment. When they leave the garden, now they're subject to a world, an earth that has been cursed and will it will kill them if they don't protect themselves. Whereas in the past, in the garden, they were protected. But yeah, good point. Who's going to see them? Why do they need clothes? Who's going to see them? And that argument's going to come back next week too. We'll revisit that in part 2.
I would say the snake was the primary.
You say the serpent was the
the
primary
serpent,
person.
Yes, because that's the temptation that is thrown out as we all get temptations in life. You know. Adam and Eve came into the world as an innocent,
Mm-hmm.
like a baby. They became adults when they started thinking with their mind because they have the intelligence and the ability to make a decision. But the serpent actually pushed them in the wrong direction.
Yeah. Mark Twain once said, God's problem was he forbade the apple. He should have forbidden the serpent.
Right.
Then they would have eaten the snake.
Right.
Well, what's your opinion of God's judgment?
Well, as Landon said, it sounds to me like they were set up.
Like they were set up?
The snake was put into the story to force an issue.
All right. So did God know they would rebel when he created them?
Well, if he's all knowing, he would.
Yeah.
Created us with a freedom of choice.
Yeah. So that means that God created the serpent, the tempter.
Sure.
Yes, he did.
When the serpent told Eve what to do.
When the serpent told Eve what to do,
Did it know what would happen if she did?
did the serpent know what would happen if she did? Well, I don't know. We have to surmise from what we can read in the story.
Serpent did what God told it to do, I think. That was its job.
That serpent did what God told him to do. Boy, can we get into a long theological discussion on that? Seriously, and this is why this story is so important, because it puts out there all these different aspects. What is God like? What are we like? What is the nature of sin? What is the nature of free will? What is the nature of choice? What role does this play or that play? I mean, God blessed the earth in the first story. By the end of the second story, he's cursed it. So what do you think? Was it all Adam and Eve's fault?
No.
You guys think they were set up?
We're creating the whole idea of shame.
We're creating the whole idea of shame. Okay, yeah.
Lack of faith
Lack of faith.
and belief.
That's supposed to make us stronger, smarter. I don't know.
Well, fortunately, this is not the end of the story. So there's a whole lot more that we're going to explore as we go along. A lot of people blame Adam. A lot of people blame Eve. Women have been tormented and tortured because it's their fault. It was their fault that we fell into sin. But on the other hand, Adam sure didn't fight it. But the whole point is, it's about our ability to choose, and what do we choose? Integrity versus innocence. And I'm a fan of integrity myself, more so than innocence. So this is just the beginning. Now next week we're going to get All in the Family. So we're going to look at Cain and Abel, and their third son, Seth. And we'll find out if that's the end of the story. And then we're going to look at some of the other family members as they evolve. Enoch and the children of Lamech, as we look at all in the family. As this circle grows bigger, as the family grows larger, and as the DNA of our faith expands and grows, and we find out more about the spiritual relatives that we aren't even thinking about, but who have a profound impact on us and our world. So, any further questions today? Brought up all the
So
disturbing
all of
issues.
these people came from two.
Yeah, yeah.
So there was no other humans in the world but Adam and Eve. So
Well, that.
everything that came after that was from Adam and Eve.
Yeah, when we start digging in, there's a lot deeper issues. In this simple story, we're presented with a lot of dilemmas and a lot of different issues, as we've just heard. You know, did God know that they would fall? Did God set them up? Did God make the serpent do it? I mean, if God's all-knowing, all-powerful,
And who was there to know what was going on?
and who was there to know what was going on?
Right, the story.
Exactly. How did we get this story? Who wrote it down?
It was written out of the air to prove some points and make some points.
Yeah, that's why I say think of it in terms of allegory or parable. This is not the evening news. This is not the New York Times or the Washington Post. This is a story about our ancestors and our family of faith. All right, so next week we'll continue with Genesis. Read Genesis 4 for next week. And in fact, go ahead and start reading through Genesis, because a lot of our stories are going to involve that. And to give you an overview of who we'll cover, we'll do Cain and Abel, we'll do Noah, we'll do Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and Joseph, the patriarchs. We'll hit Moses and Aaron, the Exodus, Joshua and Caleb, the conquerors. We'll do the judges. What do we do in lieu of a king? Boy, that's a wild one. We'll do Saul, the man who wouldn't be king, David, warts and all, Solomon, and look at wisdom and folly, Jeremiah, a voice crying in the wilderness, and a very important one you've never heard of, Zerubbabel. Zerubbabel, the second Moses. That's what we'll conclude with. There's another whole series we'll do later on for the New Testament, but this is looking at some of the people we aren't even aware of in our faith story. So we want to look deeper and find out what we can learn. And in the process, how are we going to figure out when this took place? And that's why I say the details are essential, because if you read what's there, there are definitely markers that reveal more than you thought was present in a superficial reading. All right, friends, thank you for joining me online and in person. I'm Dr. Jim Berger from Chapel by the Sea, and we'll see you Sunday for worship and back here next Tuesday morning for another round of Heroes, Scoundrels, and Kings, characters of the Bible. Thanks. Have a good day.
Looking forward to the scoundrels.